In my opinion, Avatar: The Last Airbender does near everything phenomenally in the way it tells the story, in the world building. The way bending is so personal and visual and cool. In the themes, the emotions, in basically every corner, Avatar: The Last Airbender is incredible. But one way that it amazes me the most is in the character work. So in this video, I want to break down some of the main characters of Avatar and how I think that writing their characters individually and together is some of the most flawless character work I've ever seen, and just generally gush about my favorite TV show for a little while. I already did a video where I talked about why I love Avatar. That'll be linked if you want to see that broad discussion. Now we're going to do another broad discussion about the incredible character work of this series. I also have some videos in the works where I'm going to be taking way too close of a look into some of my favorite episodes and scenes. I really love this show. I hope you're going to enjoy the chatting with me about it for a little bit. But today I want to talk about the incredible character work in this series that, in my opinion, is near unmatched. Starting with Katara. So Katara is a character that works hard, is constantly serving others. She's full of passion and determination, always trying to keep the group together. But she's also bossy, confrontational, and at times really bitter and mad when this thing that she cares about, waterbending, when Aang starts picking it up faster than she does. Her mother died as a sacrifice for her, telling the Fire Nation that she was the last remaining waterbender in their tribe, when in fact it was Katara, and she gave her life up to protect her daughter. So Katara, this very young child, not only lost her mother, but probably takes a lot of responsibility for that loss, blames herself for her mother's death, for losing her mom at too young of an age, but also for Sokka losing her mom as well, and losing his mom as well. And I think that is a big part of why Katara steps into this motherly role for everybody, because she lost her own mom, and so she tries to be the mom. She tries to fill in the gap that's in her. She tries to fill it for other people, but also she really mothers Sokka, sewing his pants, looking out for him, scolding him when she thinks he's out of line. Sokka himself in one episode says that now when he reflects on his mom, because it's been so long since she's gone, when he reflects on his mom, he thinks of Katara. He sees Katara's face because she's been the one mothering him. And I think a big reason she does that is because she feels the blame for him losing her. Then when her dad and a lot of the other men of the tribe leave to fight in the war, Katara and Sokka are both forced to grow up way too fast. Katara is now taking care of the children, delivering babies, and working alongside the other adults in the tribe despite being a child herself. She's an incredibly powerful bender from the beginning when she has no one to teach her and very little time to practice. She has so much capability to her, and while Aang is more of a natural because he's already mastered one element, so he understands how to be able to get started with the next one. Once they find a master to teach them how to bend, she surpasses Aang and becomes a master herself at a ridiculous speed. But it's because she's such a powerful bender and because she's so determined to learn. There are episodes that showcase her fierce loyalty and devotion, as well as her unwillingness to give up on her friends when they don't know what to do with themselves, and she is there just to help them process their emotions and heal. And yet, because she was forced to grow up so fast, she was never given the time to grieve and process her own emotions. And so she's left with so much anger and rage, understandably so, directed at the Fire Nation for being responsible for her mother's death. Katara is an incredible healer, and multiple times she offers to heal her enemies when they're hurt. Yet, When it comes time to face who she thinks is her mother's killer, she bloodbends him, something that she hates. And then when she does find her mother's killer, she near kills him. She understands why her father had to leave for the war, yet she can't stop herself from being furious at him for leaving them. She threatens to kill Zuko when he joins the team because she doesn't forgive him and because she doesn't trust him. And if he hurts Aang one more time, she will kill him. She's a kid that never got to grieve, that is constantly faced with the very people and the very scenarios that have damaged her, that have hurt her so badly. And she's over and over again faced with decisions that she has to make that shape who she chooses to be. When she's faced with her mother's killer, who she intends to kill, she has to make a decision in that moment that she chooses to not be like him. She won't forgive him, but she won't be him either. Katara is a very human character. She's someone who has been deeply affected by the war, and she has a lot of weaknesses and failings because of that. But she's also someone who never stops fighting. Not for the people that she sees being affected by the war too, not for her family and her friends, and not for herself. Saka. He also lost his mother at a very young age and looked up to and wanted to be just like his father, but his father also left, and he was left to be the man of the village, the one to protect his sister, and he took on that mantle with his whole heart. He tried to grow up too fast, just like his sister. He tried to be older and more mature than he was. He tried to raise up the other children in the village to be brave, strong warriors, just as he, still a kid, was trying to be a brave, strong warrior. He's sarcastic and hilarious, but he also has a really warped idea of what being a defender looks like. And he tries to project what he wants to be so bad or so hard that he ends up with this inflated ego and needing to be knocked down a lot. He regularly knocks down other benders, calling their abilities weird, and challenges the skills of warriors that he meets along the way. He's sexist, condescending, and terribly, terribly proud. But he's also fiercely loyal, dedicated, determined, and when he is humbled, he learns from it. He's a warrior in his mind with absolutely no experience. And the first time he's faced with a warship full of firebenders, which he has no hope against, and he's terrified, he stands his ground. And he's willing to go down fighting if it means being able to defend his people just a little. He stands by his sister's side no matter what, even when he truly thinks that she's making the wrong choice, he will not leave her. And when he's confronted with his flaws and when he realizes he's wrong, he's quick to humble himself and say, I'm sorry. He's always looking to protect his own, just as what is set upon him by his father. He's tries to protect his sister, the rest of Team Avatar, Yue, and then Suki. And around every corner, he's faced with people that he's trying to protect that are incredibly capable. And a huge part of his character arc, one of my favorite things about him, is that he learns that defending his people, defending the people that he loves, sometimes looks like stepping aside and fighting next to them instead of shoving them behind him and fighting for them. He's surrounded by some of the strongest people in the world, some of the strongest benders, and yet he has no bending ability. He's not naturally an incredible fighter or leader. When he tries to be everything that he believes a warrior and a leader is, he finds himself not a natural at any of it. This leads to massive insecurities and vulnerabilities, which this as well, he faces head on. He chooses to be vulnerable with his family and with his team, and he chooses to not give up and not decide that he's not good enough, but to work hard to face it and to find his place in the world, which he does find as a brilliant mind, as a strategizer, as someone who can think around the problems. Despite all his character flaws throughout the series, he's constantly compassionate and caring towards the people he cares about. When Toph joins the crew, he accepts her and is kind to her immediately, where others are snapping at her and frustrated. He seems to be the one that she trusts first and the most when she can't see because they're in the air or on ice or wherever. Sokka's arm is the one that she grabs. When they're on that airship and she's dangling in the air, Sokka is the one that devotes his life to taking care of her. He, much like his sister, is an incredibly human and flawed character, but it's his loyalty, determination, humility, and willingness to grow that leads him to finding what a true warrior and leader looks like for him. Aang, also a child, forced to grow up too fast, but he doesn't want it. And in fact, he runs away from it. And it's in that running away that causes him to not be there when the Fire Nation attacks and brings a genocide to his people. And every day from the moment he sees the aftermath of the air nomads when he visits his temple, every day he carries the weight on his shoulders of, if I had been there, could we have stopped this? Could the war have never even begun? Because with me being an avatar, with my past avatar states backing me up, with the air nomads backing me up, could we have confronted this? Could they have survived? Every day he has to deal with the fact that he has a destiny on his shoulders that he didn't choose and he doesn't want, but that also it's on his conscience what happened to his people. And now he's the last air nomad alive, and his one companion before he meets Katara and Sokka is Appa, his spirit guide and the creature that represents his people, who is at one point also taken from him. He's a gentle, fun-loving peacemaker. He embraces his childhood and desperately wants to not get lost in this war. In fact, even in the early episodes, as he has to face off against people, he'll evade and dodge and cause them to be their own undoing without ever having to issue a single blow against them. Yet, when he sees evil, atrocious acts, he loses control and physically harms people, which terrifies him because it's so against who he wants to be. Even in his non-avatar form, even in his natural state, after he loses Appa, he snaps at people and he's angry. And when he loses control and is violent, he shuts it all down and becomes unfeeling and loses hope. And it's Katara that brings him back to himself. But the core of who he is, more than the avatar, he is an air nomad, and he is desperate, begging for everyone in his path to show their humanity and to be someone that he can trust. And all along the series, all along the way to facing the Fire Lord, he is given counsel and advice from everyone in his path, including his past selves, telling him, you have to kill him. You have to take him down to free the nation. And he doesn't want to. And he's confronted with the reality that his past selves were different from him and made choices that he wouldn't make. And now they're giving him counsel, probably much wiser counsel than his own, one would think, saying you have to end the war this way. His own friends, his own found family are telling him you have to win the war this way. But it goes against the very nature of who he is. And in the end, he chooses himself. He chooses to be true to who he is in the path he chooses and in the way he confronts the Fire Lord. And in doing it that way, he carries the people he lost, the people he failed, into victory with him by honoring who he is and who they were. Toph, a character who is written off because of her disability. Her parents view her as fragile and tiny and weak and broken, and yet secretly she's the greatest earthbender in the world. She was so sheltered that she never had a friend, and in the beginning, when we meet her, she has no idea how to accept help, accept kindness, to interpret people's good intentions, or to be a part of a team. It's incredibly important to her to be self-sufficient and to not be looked down on because of her limitations. But through the series, she learns to be vulnerable, to ask for help, and to lean on others, even when her life depends on it. Not to get too personal, but Toph is the character that I relate to the most. Not my favorite character, though I love her, but the most relatable character to me. Toph's gruffness, rudeness, putting up barriers and pushing people away, misinterpreting kindness as looking down on or viewing you as unable and broken. All this looks like young Murph because I was born with a rare disease. I had so many limitations limitations in basic functionality, and I viewed myself as broken. And a lot of kind acts from people who cared about me, I interpreted as them viewing me as weak and unable. I projected a lot of my own insecurities on people, and it made me very rough around the edges. I worked on that. Like to think I'm doing better now. But there's so much about Toph's mannerisms that I see in myself at her age. And there's so many of her actions and reactions that remind me of me, who was just desperate for the world to see me as a person and not as a deficiency. And I know how hard it was for Toph to let people in and to accept help and to realize that to realize how satisfying it is to let people have that most personal part of yourself. I'm so proud of her for how far she came in the series, of letting people in, of being vulnerable, of accepting friendship, of accepting having to rely entirely on someone else and letting that be okay, while also not giving up an ounce of who she is as a person. Zuko. His mother also died to protect him, and he also probably takes on a whole lot of responsibility for that. Unfortunately, in his situation with his father, he didn't leave, he stayed around, and he's the worst. His father rejected him, believed him to be worthless, believed him to be completely inadequate, despite him truly trying his best, because he was always a step behind his sister. His entire personality at the beginning of the series is just a kid that is desperately searching for being accepted by his family, being who he believes the prince of the Fire Nation should be, and looking for the approval of the people that he thinks he needs the approval of the most. And throughout his journey, even before his redemption even begins, you see little changes in him. You see the way the little lessons and nudgings that Iroh is giving him are shaping the way he thinks. We see him stealing without any concern, without any hesitation, because he's the prince. People should give him stuff gladly, to hesitating and choosing not to take from people that clearly need it more than him. And when his redemption begins, he fails and fails again. He tries so desperately to be who Iroh wants him to be, to shift his need for acceptance onto his uncle. But the reality is, it's still not his redemption at that point, and he still is desperate for Azula and his dad's acceptance. So when that is offered to him, he rejects everything that he tried to do and he runs to them. And he finds that life very unfulfilling when he finally gets to be accepted by his father, to be standing next to his sister instead of behind her, when he gets to sit in on war meetings and he doesn't object this time, and this time he accepts what his father says. He has a romance with a girl that he truly cares about. He has everything he's always wanted, and yet none of it is who he is. When he finally does make a change that sticks, it's because it was his choice. It's because he made the journey and he found acceptance, and he found it so unfulfilling, and he realized who he was supposed to be. Not who his dad wanted him to be, not who his sister wanted him to be, not who his uncle wanted him to be, but who he wanted to be, which happened to align with Iroh, thankfully. And when he makes this change, he accepts responsibility completely for what he's done. When he confronts his father, an amazing scene, when he confronts his father and how his father has failed him over the years, and he says, they hate us and we deserve it. He's taking responsibility for what he has done. And when he goes to Team Avatar and presents himself to them and gets utter rejection, he accepts that rejection because he knows he deserves it. When he hurts Toph and then earns her rejection, his last thread of hope for Team Avatar, he accepts it because he believes he deserves it, even though it was unintentional. Zuko's story shows us that redemption isn't easy. Redemption isn't something who you've chosen to be your entire life. Changing that isn't something that happens overnight. It's something that you have to choose day after day after day. It's something that you have to fight for. And when you're not given forgiveness, it's not something that you're owed. And he also shows us that forgiving yourself isn't easy either. And in fact, not only does Zuko accept all the rejection and hate that he gets when he chooses a new path because he believes he deserves it, but then once he's accepted into the group, he still isn't forgiving himself and he still doesn't feel worthy of it. But it is the persistent acceptance from Team Avatar and from Uncle Iroh that starts to help him to truly accept himself. It's the unwithholding love and acceptance despite his flaws, despite his failings that he receives from Team Avatar and from Uncle Iroh that he desperately wanted from his family but never would have gotten, that finally begins the healing alongside the redemption. And in the final battle, when he's facing his sister and he can't be manipulated and he can't be gaslit anymore, it's him confronting everything that he's always fought for that he's finally rejecting. In a series where we have this incredible sibling relationship between Katara and Sokka, two people that could not be more different and that are struggling in different ways, yet that stand beside each other no matter what. Through all the fights, through all the conflicts, through all the differences, they are by each other's side. We're also faced with a sibling dynamic that is so broken. Two people who were raised by the same father and who were ingrained in the same ideals, yet what Zuko rejected, Azula embraced and nourished. The conscience and the pain and the reality, realizing how he's harming people that Zuko examines and embraces and changes from, Azula rejects and views as a weakness and instability. And Zuko's change even went so far as when Azula pulls the same dirty trick that she pulled in season 2 on Iroh, hitting him so that she could get away, she then is having an Agni Kai with her brother and she tries to hit Katara, but this time Zuko dives in front of her and saves her life. And while she's left to unravel, he's healed by his friend and is able to stand in the place that he was always destined to be, but he's doing it as himself and not as what his family has decided he should be. What this series does so phenomenally is not just individual character arcs that are complex, that don't go from flawed to fixed, but that have a lot of ups and downs and that have a lot of mistakes, and in the end they aren't fixed. In the end they're still raw and flawed, but healing. It doesn't just have amazing individual character arcs, but each one of these characters' individual arcs are greatly influenced by each other. Their character growth is interwoven within each other to the point that if you remove one individual component of Team Avatar, it unravels. They don't get their incredibly satisfying arcs. They have individual growth that's phenomenal, that depends on each other, and growth as a team that they need each other. But they also mirror each other. Every single character's story and flaws and growth mirrors each other in such complex ways that I haven't even begun to touch on in this video. And I could go on. I'm only talking about Team Avatar in this video, but I could talk about Azula, I could talk about Ty Lee and May and Iroh, and you name it. The complexity of these characters is so good. I'm just so incredibly impressed with the amount of care and thought that's put into not only the characters individually, but how each of their stories affect each other. Like I said, every Avatar video that I do is not going to be as broad strokes as this. I'm going to be hyper analyzing some of my favorite scenes and episodes. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you'll want to hang out with me some more for more Avatar content because I happen to love the show and would like to talk about it. Feel free to chat with me more in the comments about anything I mentioned, anything that I left out. Please hyperanalyze away. I love it. Check out my Patreon if you feel like it. We talk a lot there. Check out my second channel if you feel like it. I talk a lot there. I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and Thursdays on the second channel. It's linked in the description. I will see you guys again soon. Bye.